Please stand with me. On behalf of the Brown family, we want to show our appreciation and thankfulness to you for coming today to celebrate the life of Matt Brown. It's a huge impact on them that this room would be full of people that loved him and cared about him. Would you pray with me? Father, be with us today. God, give us strength, give us encouragement. God, help us to remember a life that was well lived. God, we pray that your presence would be here today. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. You may be seated. Matthew John Brown, age 50, was made whole again on November 17th, 2021. Matt was born June 27th, 1971 in Canton, Ohio, and grew up mostly in Springfield, Missouri area. He graduated from Central High School in 1989 and from Missouri State University in 2000 with a degree in secondary education and biology. His plan was to teach high school, but when the opportunity arose for him to join the Springfield Police Academy, he jumped at the chance to fulfill a childhood dream of joining law enforcement. He graduated from the 47th Police Academy and served for 21 years as a dedicated police officer for the community at Springfield. He served in many different roles during his time there, but his favorite contributions were teaching in the academy and serving with the Honor Guard. Teaching was a gift for him, and he simply adored putting effort into training new recruits, either through the academy or through serving as a field training officer. He also spent time as a department spokesperson, detective, and hostage negotiator. The last year of his time at the Springfield Police Department was spent on a patrol squad. He wanted to round out his profession by going back to the traditional basics that originally drew him to a career in law enforcement. Concurrently, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Brown had a 25-year career with the Missouri Army National Guard. After serving years as an enlisted soldier, he was commissioned through Officer Candidate School in 1999 as a second lieutenant. He served as a platoon leader for 4 years. In 2009, Matt deployed to Afghanistan, where he served as the battalion's plan officer. While deployed, he received a Bronze Star Medal for his work with the 203rd Engineer Battalion that conducted route clearance operations in Regional Command East Afghanistan. In 2011, he served as the 294th Engineer Company Commander. In 2015, he served as the executive officer for the 203rd, followed in 2017 by serving as the S3 for the lower 110th MEB. In 2020, he served as the XO for the 35th Engineer Brigade, and just prior to his death, he was chosen by senior leaders to take command of the 203rd Engineer Battalion this coming spring. Aside from his family, there was nothing in his life that he was more proud of and passionate about than his service to his country. He was immensely patriotic and would have laid down his life for any of his fellow soldiers, no questions asked. Matt married and is survived by the love of his life, Kelly, in 1994. Throughout their 27 years of marriage, they were blessed with 3 beautiful children. His oldest daughter, Bailey, married to Brandon Blackman, his only son, Evan, and youngest daughter, Mallory. In the last 2 years, Bailey and Brandon blessed him with the title of Papa, with his 2 grandsons, Lauren, also known as Ren, and Dimitri, Michi. He adored his family with all his heart. Nothing was more important. He was the best hands-on dad and papa, always up for being playful and silly. Parenting and grandparenting came so natural to him, and this title he was most proud of. Other surviving family members include his parents, 10 siblings and their spouses, a host of in-laws and nieces and nephews. He especially idolized his brother Mike and modeled much of his life after him. Matt also leaves behind an infinite number of brothers and sisters in blue and fellow servicemen and women and friends. He was kind to everyone, and he was a beautiful human. He had a heart of gold and will be missed more than words can ever express. You were and are so loved, Matt. We wish we could have saved you, but we find comfort in knowing you're in the presence of God and living out eternity in paradise until we meet again. I'd like to introduce to you Chief Williams from the Springfield Police Department. He's going to come up and say a few words as well.
Thank you, Pastor. Matt Brown, as noted, began with the Springfield Police Department in 2000 with the 47th Academy class. He was awarded the Leadership Award in that Academy class by the instructors, which foreshadowed what Matt was going to be like throughout his career, leading through example, leading through his actions, leading whoever he might come in contact with. Matt served over 20 years, dedicated service to the police department, and in reviewing his personnel file and looking at his career accomplishments, I'd like to share a few things from that with you today. His very first evaluation, I noted this. Matt expressed a deep desire to be a good officer, and he enjoys the field of law enforcement. For those of us who work in law enforcement, 20 years or more is a lengthy career, and sometimes we might become jaded, cynical. That didn't happen with Matt. He was always positive, never saw him not smiling. In fact, just a week ago, I saw him and had a short conversation with him, and he expressed his excitement about three things. One, thanks for finally getting these external vest carriers, Chief. And we talked about the pros and cons of the two different styles and why he liked the one he had and how that was going to be beneficial to every officer in the department. Number two, introduced me to his rookie that he just started training. He was excited about training someone new and continuing that effort in building the police department for the future. And then finally, he expressed to me his excitement about the future, the police department, policing, and said, I think we finally turned the corner and there are brighter days ahead. Matt was an excellent communicator, trained as an educator, and that was evident in his selection, believe it or not, just 2 years into his career as a department spokesperson. 2002, he became the public information officer for the police department. Served 4 years in that role. And during that time, he saw the benefit of something called the World Wide Web. In 2004, he created the department's first website from scratch by himself and was commended by then Chief Lynn Rowe for his efforts in informing the public, and I would continue with that, setting the tone for the explosion of social media and the internet that we have today. It's all Matt's fault. Matt served in that role for 4 years, and during that time, he also served in another function, a volunteer function that he started early on in his career, 20 plus years as a member of the Honor Guard. 20 years volunteering outside of your normal duty assignment. And he did that because he had pride in the uniform, pride in the mission, proud of the service, and proud of the department he served. He set an example for everybody. I've heard it mentioned more than once that he was the model of the perfect officer, the poster child, if you would, for the police department. Nobody should look better than Matt in uniform, and most of us don't. But it gave us something to adhere to, ascribe to, and try to meet. Matt transitioned throughout his career to a number of different roles, but the second one I want to highlight is his work in the training department. He always served as an instructor, but he served 4 years from 2016 to 2020 in the training section, serving as a recruit class coordinator for a period of time and also as the in-service coordinator. During that time, and I've heard this mentioned more than once, Matt took pride in his uniform and pride in those recruits' uniforms. In fact, I just heard this past week, he probably taught the majority of the police department how to properly shine their boots. It's a simple thing. It's a really simple thing. Making sure that your footwear looks good. The rest of you is going to look good. Right? Take pride in your appearance is something that Matt tried to instill in those recruits and carried on throughout his career as well. In between those two times, I want to go back to something else. I say he served as a department's public information officer as a 2-year officer from 2 to 6 years, for 4 years. I first met Matt, though, in 2010. He had been deployed to Afghanistan in 2009. I started here in 2010. I didn't know Matt. I met Matt when he returned from his deployment, and the first thing he did was visit me to introduce himself and present me with a flag that had flown over his base in Afghanistan to the police department and to me. That flag is still proudly displayed in the headquarters division of the police department. Matt had pride in his military service, but he also had pride in the police department. Shortly thereafter, I was reinstituting the position of the public affairs officer, similar to the public information officer. Guess who one of my applicants was? Matt Brown. I had no idea about his previous service, but when I interviewed him, I went, this is the guy. I want this as the face of the police department, the spokesperson for the police department. And I selected him that role. He served in that role for another 4 years. Well respected, well known in the community, never met a person he didn't like. But he wrote himself out of a job. Because in 2013, I said, we really need to figure out where we're going with this position. And with the explosion of social media and public transparency, I said, I need you to create a strategic plan for what this Office of Public Affairs is going to be. And he did. And he presented it to me, and I read through it. And at the end, I said, Matt, you just wrote yourself out of a job because your conclusion is we need a professional media person in this role. A professional journalist, someone with experience, knowledge, and training to set the tone. And I adopted the plan. And Matt transferred, served another role in the police department, knowing that he had made things better where he was, and we've continued to improve on his vision for that role. I'm going to close with a quote from Matt. In 2012, he was interviewed about his military service and his police service. He was potentially embarking on another deployment. And he was quoted in that article as saying, but whether it's Springfield or with the Army, everything about my life is some kind of service. That's part of who I am. Kelly, Bailey, Evan, Mallory, my heart aches for you. But it's my hope and prayer that God will give you some peace and comfort in the days and months ahead as you reflect on a life well lived. Now it's my pleasure to introduce General James Schreffler from the Missouri National Guard.
Thank you, Chief. Although I didn't know Matt too personally, I do know that he was a vital member of the team who dedicated his life to public service and helping those in need. And I'm honored to share a snapshot of his military career with you today. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew J. Brown's career began when he enlisted in the Missouri Army National Guard in September of 1990 as an aircraft electrician. He later determined he could best serve the nation and state as a commissioned officer and entered Officer Candidate School, commissioning as a second lieutenant in the Military Police Corps on September 18, 1999. He served as a platoon leader for the 1138th Military Police Company from September 99 to February 2001. During this time, he also completed a bachelor's degree in biology for secondary education from Southwest Missouri State University and took a break from military service shortly thereafter. Upon his return to service in January of 2006, he followed his brother to the Army Corps of Engineers and held a variety of positions, to include platoon leader with the 276th Engineer Company, company construction officer, executive officer, 276th Engineer Company, plans officer, 203rd Engineer Battalion, including a deployment to Afghanistan in 2009 and 10, company commander, 294th Engineer Company, 110th Maneuver Enhancement Brigade staff, and executive officer, 203rd Engineer Battalion. In November 2017, then Major Brown was selected for the Operations Officer S3 position for the 110th Maneuver Enhancement Brigade and promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in January 2019. He served in this position until August of 2020 and supported numerous state emergencies as well as the COVID-19 pandemic response. He then served as the lead for the design management section of the 35th Engineer Brigade before being selected as the executive officer of the 35th Engineer Brigade, where he most recently served through a Corps Warfighter exercise. Lieutenant Colonel Brown was selected for battalion command of the 203rd Engineer Battalion for his next assignment, a testament to his previous display of leadership and potential for challenging assignments. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Brown's awards and decorations include the Bronze Star Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, the Army Achievement Medal, the Army Reserve Component Achievement Medal 8th Award, the National Defense Service Medal, the Afghanistan Campaign Medal with 2 service stars, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Armed Forces Reserve Medal with Mobilization Device, Non-Commissioned Officer Professional Development Ribbon, the Army Service Ribbon, the Army Overseas Service Ribbon, the Army Reserve Component Overseas Training Ribbon, the NATO Medal, and the Valorous Unit Award. He was also recognized with the Aviation Crew Member Badge and the Combat Action Badge. Matt's career and life of service to others is inspirational to all and will sorely be missed. May God grant him eternal rest and peace. Essayons.
Some of you guys complain about being busy. That's a lot of stuff. And he was a CrossFit coach on the side. Lived a life well lived. My name is Brad Fox. I got the privilege of being Matt's pastor at North Point Church down at the Nixa location. And it's an honor to be here with you today. And just to reflect on Matt's life. And I hear the stories from the police and the military, and it's like, what else did you have time to do? And there's so much more. It's pretty incredible. The things that we remember about Matt, everyone remembers his smile. I mean, that's the one thing, as I'm talking with the family, it's just like he's always smiling. You know, he had some great teeth as well, but I mean, he's just, if you encountered Matt, most likely you got a hug from him or a handshake, and you just knew there's some substance there, there's something behind that. We remember him for his love for everyone, remember him as a husband, as a father, a grandfather, and a servant. He'll be remembered for many things, for many people. And Matt touched the lives of those family and friends as no one else should, and that is the reason we show up to a room like this, and it's full of people, out of respect, out of honor. I was visiting with the family a few days ago, and a common theme that kept coming up in their memories was the fact that he loved deeply. He was kind to all and treated everyone with dignity and respect. I did a stint as a police chaplain several years back, and did some ride-alongs, and Matt was the guy I would do some ride-alongs with because I had that natural connection, and of course, you got to have a guy like me who's skinny and out of shape, to get your back just in case, you need to jump your car battery or something. But I remember doing the first ride-along with him, and we were over in his old stomping grounds right by Cheddar's, where he used to work, and there were some people holding up signs asking for help, and that was back during a time when you couldn't be standing right there in the middle of the street asking for help. So I remember Matt going up, and part of me is just like, all right, we get to see some action here finally. And Matt went up and he was kind to them and spoke with respect and showed dignity. And I was like, that is something pretty special right there, because it shows it's a man who truly cares about his profession and loving and serving people, no matter who they are. Those ride-alongs left a lasting impression. I learned a lot of things about Matt on those ride-alongs. I learned that he loved his family immensely. Matt spoke about stuff I didn't understand also on those ride-alongs, like stuff called anime, which is, I think it's Greek for weird cartoons that don't make sense to grown men. He also spoke a lot about like Star Wars and Star Trek, and we got to the point where he had to confess that he was a nerd. So as much as you look at this Greek Adonis of a body, he was a nerd. He was a big-time nerd. But he was a self-proclaimed nerd. I wouldn't have called him that. He had a weapon. Matt loved dad jokes, and I heard this one no less than 5 times, and if you spent any time around him, he told you about his tenure at Taco Bell, where he worked at Taco Bell as, he was pretty young and hadn't quite gotten to that place where he was thinking about the police department yet. But he told me about a time he was working the cash register, and a gentleman came in and said, "Make me a taco." And it happened to be like one of the general managers that was coming to check on the quality of the store. So when he says, "Make me a taco," Matt's response was, "Poof, you're a taco." That was his last day on the job, I believe, at that place. But it sounds like he made that a fun place to work. Other parts in his work history that we've learned was his stint at Auto Magic. He worked at Auto Magic and somehow drew Kelly in to get a job there as well, and that's where they met. And 2 weeks later, it was love at first sight. And Auto Magic was not just magic for cars; it was magic for relationships as well. So Kelly says they're 100% made for each other, 100%. And we see that through 27 years of marriage. It's great proof. Through the highs and the lows, the good and the bad, they found that love and forgiveness were the key elements that helped them through. Matt had told me on multiple occasions, we do drive-bys and we go by Baptist Bible College, and he said, I went there, I wanted to be a pastor. And I'm like, really? That's amazing, but you became a cop instead. It's like, that's what I felt God called me to do. But there was a time in my life where I wanted to be a pastor. And talking with the family, he still has a lot of memory verses that were tied up in his mind. And his favorite one, his life verse, was this, and it was written inside his BDUs. It was Romans 1:16. And if you're going to read it later, you have to read it in the King James Version, because that's the only version that he would accept. So, and it's on the screen behind us, I think. "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek." Not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. He wore it proudly. The way that he treated people. I love seeing him come into church too, because he'd go get his coffee and just kind of strut on in. And I remember last Sunday, Sunday before last, I shot him a text, "Hey, great to see you." "You too, man!" Exclamation point, exclamation point. He would light up a room when he walked in. And he wasn't assuming that people would know who he was. In fact, he'd kind of sit quietly off to the side there, unassuming. But if you watched the news, you knew who the guy was. I remember the first week he came in, people were like, "That's the guy from the police department who's on TV." And I just moved to town, so I didn't know. But you could see why that he was chosen for that job. And he did it well. Matt's passing will bring many emotions. I want to let you know it's okay to express those emotions. I know for many of you, you're sad. Some of you, you're mad. And we're angry and we're frustrated because of the circumstances. And we wish we could have done something more to change the outcome. But during this morning, I want you to think of 3 things. And I don't know if you've ever gone away from a funeral with homework, but I'm going to give you some because Matt was a teacher and he would expect that. So there's 3 things I'm going to give you that are expectations of all of us as we leave this. Number 1 is this: lean into relationships. Lean into them. Sometimes it's easy putting walls up and barriers, but I challenge you, lean in. We tend to isolate ourselves when we're feeling hurt or tired or lonely or depressed. And I know in this size of room with the different people that we have here, there's people that are feeling that right now. You're feeling hurt, you're feeling lonely, you feel like you can't talk to anybody. Find someone you could talk to. If not, come find me. Come find one of your pastors. We love just to spend time just talking to you and hearing what you have to say. Number 2 goes along with that. It's listen to others. Listen to others. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own world and the things that are going on that we don't truly listen. If you truly listen to someone, you're going to hear something maybe in their voice. You're going to hear a key word that makes it you want to sit down and have a conversation. Just tell me about your day. What's going on? Okay, what can we do to fix this? What can we do to let you know that you're not alone walking through this? Listen to others. Have your radar up in conversations. Listen, pray that God gives you insight into conversations. Even as a pastor, I've been doing it for a number of years. I'll get into a situation where I'm talking with someone where they're talking about something that's like way beyond what I've ever experienced in life. But what I'll say is like, God, just give me the wisdom to shut my mouth when I need to, but also give me the wisdom to give them great advice that will help them through this situation. Not all of us are equipped to be trained counselors, but we're all professional listeners if we just shut our mouths and listen for a little bit. Because it's amazing some of the things that we could hear when we're not thinking of that response. We're just thinking, hey, you know what, this person needs a little help right now. And finally, 3, I think Matt would want us to love others. And it's hard to love people sometimes. And if you're in a certain line of work, too, especially I know you get a little cynical towards others. And I'm talking about being a pastor, not being anything else. It's easy to get cynical, and it's easy to judge people and think that you know where they're coming from. But take a moment and see them how God sees them. And the thing that I know about God is He loves everybody equally. I believe when we look through it with that lens, we're able to see things a lot differently. See things the way that God sees them. Remember this, life isn't meant to live alone. So in honor of Matt's life, lean into relationships, listen, and love. It's 3 things. They're all L's. I can send you my notes if you want later. Jesus told us this in Matthew 5:4. He said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." God will comfort us in our grief. God will comfort us in our time of mourning. I want you to know that He is here, and He's okay with it, whatever way that you're mourning. If you're angry at Him, He's fine with that. That's an emotion that's okay. If you're sad, if you have other emotions, express those how you want to. And friends, let other friends experience those emotions and that grief in their own timing and in their own ways. It's going to look different, so give some grace, give some just a little bit of peace and patience in those moments. God knows what you're feeling because He felt that too when His Son was on the cross dying for our sins. As a follower of Jesus, I believe that we're not alone today, but that God Himself is here with us. And since He is, we can mourn, we could have honest feelings and emotions about what we're dealing with, and we could remember Matt exactly how he was. A man who loved God, a man who loved his family and loved others immensely. Will you join me in prayer? God, we thank You for the gift of Matt's life. We cherish the time we had with him. And although we don't understand the why and the when, let us celebrate a life that was well lived. Our prayer is that the impact Matt had on our lives will leave a lasting legacy in generations to come. Let us take these precious memories and moments and hold on to them forever. Father, we pray You will keep Your hand of guidance on all of us as we navigate our grief. Give us hope and peace when we feel like we have none. Let those who mourn be surrounded by friends and family who will sit with them and pray with them and love them through this difficult season. We pray these things in Your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Rachel Meyer is going to sing a song during this time.
You are good when voice when my fear is crippling. You are true, you are true. Even in my wandering, you are joy, you are joy. You're the reason that I sing. You are life, you are life. In you death is lost its sting. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. You are more than my words could ever say. You are Lord, you are Lord. All creation will proclaim. You are here. In your presence I'm made whole. You are God, of all else I'm letting go. And no, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. And no, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The riches of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing, no other name. Jesus, Jesus.
At this time, I'm going to invite Mike Brown, Matt's brother, to come up, and several family members are going to be coming up and just sharing some thoughts. So, thank you.
Good morning. First, I want to say thank you to God for the presence you see here today. This is amazing. I believe this is what Matt would have wanted. His family, all parts of it. Police officers, military, gathered together, celebrating his life here on earth. He loved tremendously all people. The first night Matt passed away, I I couldn't sleep. I was concerned about his salvation. After a night of research and input from Wayne Bushnell, I feel confident that Matt has the opportunity to stand before God with Jesus and repent of all sin. I expect to see him one day when God decides to come, let me come home. I want to take a moment to reach out to anyone that is considering going home before God decides it's your time. Take a moment. Right now, look around. These people care about all of us. There's so many supporting and loving people in just this room alone that would do anything to help keep you on this earth. I expect there is not a person here or online that would not move mountains to assist and not have the grief we are all feeling to happen to another family. Please, please, if you're down and you're sure that the situation is too dire, reach out to anyone. All of the circumstances that you believe are insurmountable can be overcome. Allow God to decide it is your time. You are loved. Now I want to give you an idea of who Matt was to me. He was my little brother. There was a time when that phrase bugged him, but later it was a term of endearment. He'd use it. Matt put God first in his life. Even though he struggled, he knew and loved God. I was going to say many do not know this, but Brad beat me to it. He started expecting to be a minister. I'm glad he shared that with you. Was at BBC for a couple of years and was on the path to become a minister. Although his life did not take him down that path, he committed to serve and love God. Even through the pain he was feeling, and we feel today, good has come from this. I believe Matt knew God would use this situation. Matt loved his family, his entire family, all of you. During family gatherings, he would take time to make everyone feel a little at home, a little more relaxed, when he had a moment to focus attention on them. Although he loved his entire family, he would sacrifice time with his other family members to ensure he took care of the needs of Kelly and the kids. He would spend a lot of time at home just being with them. He did that well. He was able to sit still and enjoy life with them. He put them before others for the right reasons. Matt had a contagious smile. He got all the looks. That would put people at ease. He could tell a story like very few could, typically taking liberties to make the fish much larger, circumstances more grave, or a seeming chaos in the circumstance that didn't exist. He was a ham. He would keep people's attention for hours, doing his best to make them feel comfortable. He was a nerd about video games, spending hours playing them online with others. When he was in his teens, he would spend most days at the mall in the arcade, I think he would have spent all my money too. He became really good and could challenge others and stay at a game for hours with only 25 cents. It was amazing. He called me the day he found out he was selected to attend the Springfield Police Academy. He said he was sorry he had to try this route. He had just finished his degree in secondary education in biology and planned to teach with me. He served as a police officer. To serve as a police officer was so exciting for him. He resigned his commission in the military so he could focus his attention on being the best police officer he could be. Those of you he worked with, he loved you and respected you. He told me countless stories about his time on the streets with all of you. I happened upon a YouTube video about a week ago with Matt. I'm sure some of you saw it. It had 1.5 million viewers. The guy he ran off a Walmart property was not happy. That was just a small example of his calm demeanor, but ready to brawl if that's what it came to. I'm very proud of my little brother for his service to the Springfield citizens. Last but not least, to his brothers and sisters in arms. He was just as proud to be an officer in the Army as he was to be an officer in the police force. It was with great pride when others would refer to us as the Brown Boys. There were several times where our careers intersected in the 203rd Engineer Battalion and 35th Engineer Brigade. He took great pride in who he was, asking many questions to ensure he understood the roles and responsibilities, where and what doctrines said. He wanted to ensure he was a confident and competent officer, both technically and tactically. He was especially excited to command the 203rd Engineer Battalion. He loved the Hound Dogs. He was concerned to follow such a great list of leaders that he respected, but was ready for that challenge. Although Matt had demons he struggled with, who would want us all to remember him, the man you have pictured in the interactions you had with him. A man that would do whatever he could to help, a loving and a caring man. I miss you, little brother. Susie, I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is Susie. I'm better known by Matt and all of my family as Shue, S-H-U-E. That was a nickname given to me by my father. And I am Matt's mother-in-law. I would just like to speak a few words on sort of behalf of Matt's extended family, which of course will be the in-law side of his family. I'd like to begin by saying that my beloved dad died 6 years ago, and Matt spoke at his funeral. My dear mother died 6 months ago, and so it was almost 6 months to the day that Matt spoke at her funeral. His words were heartfelt, they were eloquent, He shared memories that spanned their 70-year marriage, and our family hung on every word that he spoke because we found great comfort in the living and beautiful memories that he so vividly presented to us. I've always been deeply grateful for that personal part of their funerals. If things had followed the natural sequence, I suppose I pictured Matt speaking at my funeral. But with the unexpected circumstances, I just felt a situation in which I deeply wanted to say a few words about Matt. Now, let me say that, rest assured, probably any member of our family could speak up, could step up here and present you with 10 or 12 memories without ever having to give it much thought. But I'm going to be selfish today and share a couple of my memories with you. First of all, our family is rather large. I have 4 kids and 10 grandkids and 2 great-grandkids. Thank you, Bailey and Brandon. And we usually get together for large get-togethers at least a few times a year. Geographically, it's hard for all of us to be together, but we try to do that once or twice a year, and it gets kind of wild and crazy sometimes. But Christmas celebration was a big one for us, and we usually would celebrate at a house that I have that's not the house I live in all the time. It's just kind of a family get-together. And so I go a couple of days in advance generally to decorate, and it's several days of intense decorating, and I have to carry Christmas trees and decorations from my basement up around the side of the house and into the house where I assemble them, and my family always gives me a bad time about them having to listen to how long it took me to decorate or whatever, but I love doing it. And I remember last year at the end of the celebration, the evening was about over, and as Matt was leaving, he stepped aside and said, "Susie, did you really do all this by yourself, or Shu?" And I said, "Yes," and he just took it upon himself to tell me how beautiful things were and how much he appreciated all the work that I put into it. And it's just one of those things that Matt did. He never hesitated to express his thanks of appreciation to people for their efforts. Then there was a summer afternoon that we were having a family get-together at the lake, and we were all just floating around on the water, and Matt and I were kind of chatting, and it was at a time when the issue of police brutality and all of that was really big in the media, and I felt bad, and I was concerned because I know that law enforcement people were feeling very unappreciated at that time. So I listened to the news, and I know that there's some pretty rough stuff that goes on in Springfield, and I, of course, was concerned about Matt and the rest of you as well. And so I told Matt that I was really sorry that he was having to listen to all of this stuff on the media and yet try to continue his job and go out and protect the public. And I had kind of set the scene. I had the platform out there, and there was no rant from Matt. Matt just told me that he appreciated the concern, but that he felt very fortunate to work in a community that supported their police department and supported their law enforcement. Thinking back, I thought, I really don't remember many conversations that I've had with Matt that he did not take, like the chief mentioned also, did not take that positive approach to things. I think that's probably one of the reasons why people were so drawn to Matt, because he was always a positive person. Another memory involved my parents. As my mom and dad grew older, they, of course, developed some health problems and created some difficulty for them in their normal routines. But I fortunately, about this time, retired from my jobs, and I geographically was only about 30 miles away, so I could be there a lot to help them with things. And it was fine. I never ever looked at it as a burden. It was something I wanted to do. But on multiple occasions, Matt, my son-in-law, told me how much he loved my parents and how much he appreciated the time that I spent helping them through their difficult years. And he told me that it would have broken his heart if he had thought that they had no one to help them, through the times when they needed it. Again, that was Matt. Wherever there was a need, he had a concern. One last memory. With both of my parents gone, it was necessary, of course, that we clean out their house and get it ready to sell. And I had spent quite a bit of time going through things and all. And so a few months ago, one day during the summer, my 4 kids and I got together to disperse property. You know, everyone had a few things that they would like to have from my parents' house because of the memories and all. And so we were dividing things up and trying to decide what to do with the remainder of the things. And Matt was present, of course, because Kelly was there, but he was not participating in this division of property. I admit, and my children will confirm this, that I have trouble letting go of things that are associated especially with so many fond memories. And it was making me sad, but Matt knew that, and he sensed it. And after probably a few hours into this process, Matt just got up and walked into the room where we were, walked over to my chair and put his arms around me, gave me a long hug and a kiss. He knew what I needed, and that, again, was Matt. He was always sensitive to everyone's needs, and he knew what I needed at that moment. Now, some of these memories may seem a little bit insignificant to some people, but they're things that I will never forget. His words and actions probably don't surprise any of you because they define Matt's character. To know Matt was to know love, kindness, concern for others, sensitivity, genuineness, respect, and a wonderful sense of humor. Matt could confront any situation calmly and with tact, and nearly always produce a positive outcome. His dedication and love for his family, community, country, and God never wavered. Matt would help anyone in need without hesitation, and he consistently went above and beyond. He never sought recognition for anything he did, and I feel certain there were a lot of kind deeds done that none of us know about. I felt a special bond for Matt, and I suspect that many of you sitting here today would say the same thing. To me, that was one of Matt's most endearing traits. When he spent time or conversation with a person, and I mean he could talk to any age, any race, any religion, it did not matter to Matt. But he was 150% focused on that person and what they had to say. He never rushed the conversation, and he always made the person feel that what they had to share was valid and important. And at the end of the conversation, you felt like you had a bond with Matt. Other than God, Matt shared no stronger bonds than those he shared with Bailey, Evan, Mallory, Mike, and Kelly, the love of his life, and my daughter. Kelly, being a mom, you know as well as I do that we want to fix things for our chicks. Dear sweet Kelly, I'm so sorry I can't fix this. I can't even make it a little better. I can't even find words to comfort you. and seeing you in such pain is almost more than my heart can bear. But Kelly, Bailey, Evan, Mallory, and Mike, you all especially, are the ones that my heart breaks for. It is all of you that I pray for. I pray to God for strength, comfort, peace, and his loving arms around you. And although today I know this seems like an impossible task, my words to you are live, laugh, and love. I think that's the way Matt lived his life, and I believe that's his legacy to you. To Matt, I don't even want to speak about him in the past tense because I will feel his presence every day, and I think that our family will as well. I will always love and adore you, Matt. I thank you for enriching our family and for every moment that you shared with us. I would like to thank God for every tear that is shed here today, because those tears are evidence of all the lives that Matt touched. Rest in peace, Matt, and know that this world was a better place for the 50 years that you were in it. And there was one thing that I just decided to add to my talk that I did not originally have, but I have listened and heard so many times today, life well lived, that I wanted to share with you just a brief saying that is from Thoreau. And I have really probably can only attach this to the lives of a handful of people that I have known. But what it says is, when it comes time to die, let's not discover that we never lived. Oh, how Matt lived. I love you, Matt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evan, and I am Matt's son. First off, I would like to thank everyone for coming out and being part of something like this. I know there are many people that are coming from different cities and states possibly, so I sincerely thank all of you for taking a day, or maybe even several days, to take some time out and be here with us in this time. My dad had a lot of good traits about him. One of those was being able to speak out in very large crowds, like I'm doing right now. I've learned over the years that I was not blessed with this trait. I'm writing this letter at 8:43 p.m. as of Monday night, and I can already see my legs shaking and botching every other sentence. So bear with me as I take some time to share this with you all. I've been going through my old phone lately and scrolling through my dad and I's old text messages. As I kept scrolling, I wished so hard that I could just keep scrolling and never have to reach the top of our messages together. Eventually, I came to that point. On February 28th of 2016 was your first text to me, and it was you setting up my own Yahoo email for me. A text like that had so much meaning behind you, going out of your way to sit down and take time out of your own day to make others' workload just a little less. I know this gesture of yours was projected towards anyone you knew in your life. As I was going through our messages, I took a list of 4 things you were obsessed with: your lawn, your new car you wanted, playing World of Warcraft with me, and telling me how much you loved me. If you knew my dad, the only thing he liked about the outside of the house was his lawn. He wanted it cut once a week, every week, the whole perimeter weed-eated, and the garage and driveway blown out with a leaf blower. So if you were ever at our house in the last 5 or 6 years and saw how good the lawn looked, you're welcome, because I did that. One of my dad's obsessions was his Maxima. It got so bad to the point where he made it his screensaver on his monitor. Keep in mind this was before he had his Maxima. Eventually, a few years passed by and he got his hands on his baby. He was very specific about what kind of Maxima he wanted. a 2016 Nissan Maxima SR Midnight Edition. Tap back into just a few months ago, he pulled me into his office and wanted to show me something on his computer. Mom, I think we kept this a secret from you and just told you it was something World of Warcraft related, but we sat down and looked at this new car he wanted. He wanted a 2020 Jaguar F-Type R, black coat, black rims, black interior, everything. We spent nearly an hour in his office watching videos about this car he wanted so badly. Of course, Dad wanted the V8 supercharged Jaguar with 575 horsepower because he could never be satisfied with a slow-driving car. He would always point at his monitor and tell himself, "Look how beautiful this thing is." He told me once he retired from the police department, he was going to be given a big chunk of money up front on top of his retirement, and he was going to go straight after this car and be the first one in Springfield to have it. As I did my daily driving throughout town, I would stumble across the exact same car that he was talking about. I would take a picture of it and send it to him and rub it in that he wasn't going to be the first one in town to have it. He would follow up and ask where the car was parked. Because he was a police officer in Springfield, he was driving around a lot. And because of this, he would drive to the location of the car and tell me it wasn't the same car that he wanted. There was a very specific part about these Jaguars that made the F-Type R one of its own. It had a little green and red badge on the back bumper that said R. He mentioned this to me about 3 to 4 times after I kept sending him pictures of Jaguars I found in town. The process kept repeating itself. I would send him a picture of the car, and he would go back to make sure it wasn't the same as he described it. Eventually, we never found an F-Type R in Springfield. One morning on my way to work, I found one. It was parked in USA Mortgage right off South National Street. Every morning I drove by, and I could see that green and red badge clear as day. Every color on the car was black too, exactly how he pictured it. I told myself I was going to take a picture and send it to him. I never took a couple minutes out of my day to get around to taking that picture of his dream car and send it to him. I hate myself so much for not being able to do that for him. Lately, I've been telling my friends that within the next several years, I want to have a Tesla in my hands. But after thinking about all this and everything going on, I will be driving the Jaguar my dad was going to get. If it takes 4 or 5 or even 10 years, I will grasp the very baby my dad wanted in his hands so badly. I just want to tell myself, "Hey Dad, look how beautiful this thing is." Going back to obsessions, the third thing I wrote down was World of Warcraft, or any video game in general. I know a lot of dads that used to be die-hard video gamers. The first game I watched my dad play was Call of Duty 4. Anytime I watched him play it, he was always on the headset with his friends. I knew 3 names that always stuck out when he was playing: Tyler, Patrick, and Troy. I know you guys are somewhere out there in the crowd or watching online, and I just want to tell you thank you. Thank you for getting on Xbox every night with him to play Call of Duty and making him a happy dad. Thank you for staying up late with him until your thumbs could barely move. This video game obsession eventually stemmed into the computer world around 2008 when World of Warcraft, better known as WoW, was a few years old. I can't tell you how much my dad loved this game. It became part of his daily life to just sit down for a few hours to play for a little. Eventually, this obsession took me over, and I loved WoW just as much as him, potentially even more. I grew up with it just like he did, and so did my sisters. It got so bad that my school grades were reflecting on how much time I spent on WoW, probably because of how good I was. Dad always referred to me as his WoW encyclopedia because if there was ever anything he didn't know, he always came to me instead of Google because I knew exactly what he needed. Any other parent that saw this affecting their schoolwork would strip away the video game in a heartbeat. But Dad always told me, "You're so lucky to have a nerd dad like me that understands this." My dad made several characters in the game, but in 2009, I myself made a Retribution Paladin, better known as a Ret. My dad watched me play this character so much that he started playing it as well. As the years went on, we were still playing the Ret, but just seat hopping after about every hour to take turns playing. A couple years ago, he had the bright idea to buy me my own computer so we could play together. We jumped into it pretty quickly. He played the Ret, and I was his little healer. Doing battlegrounds, dungeons, and raids together, we would always be in voice with each other, hearing him yell as he was on low health and needed more healing, telling me to press more buttons. I knew my limits, though, because I was the better WoW player. I told him I couldn't keep up with healing, and he listened. He was patient and more understanding the more we played. When I was looking through my text with him, So much of our conversation was, can you help me level the red? Can we play tonight? Hop in voice, let's do Battlegrounds, buddy. Anytime he played the red, he always had visual countdowns of when his abilities were available to use. When I hopped onto the red, I would turn these off because it clogged the screen. Since I moved out of home, I never set any time aside to play with him on WoW, and he eventually moved on to other video games. He always nagged me that I never wanted to play with him, but I kept telling him we can still play together. For the past several months, I was playing the red, leveling it, gearing out to the max just like he wanted. A few weeks ago, he asked me what games I've been playing lately, and I told him I was playing WoW and had the red totally geared out. On November 5th, he texted me and said, I want to play the red, but I don't want to mess anything up you're doing. Can you let me know how we can do that? I replied back and said, we can always take pictures with our phones to see which buttons belong where. I kept a lot of the buttons with the same keybind actually, I just moved them to different bars. He replied with, okay, sounds good. Since then, we never talked about WoW again. In a heartbeat, I would go back to play with him for 5 more minutes. To hear the excitement in his voice every time we were victorious in WoW, to be on for several hours throughout the day, and even staying up late at night when we both had work in the morning, is something I cannot dread ever having again. I will continue to play the ret for the both of us. This character in a pixelated world will always remind me of you and the adventures we took on together. Moving on to the last obsession my dad had, him telling me how much he loved me. I knew my dad always loved me, but sometimes he showed that love out of the blue when I least expected it. I would wake up or be at work one day and just see his name pop up on my phone. When he texted me, he always said the same thing at the start, hey buddy, then followed by how he saw something today that made me think of him and that he loved me. This kind of love from him never ever went away. I've never seen this kind of love stem from anyone I've ever known, but this kind of love wasn't just to me. It was to his wife, his daughters, his grandkids, his pets, his brothers, sisters, soldiers, police officers. If you knew Dad, I bet he made you smile. This goes with any circumstance you found yourself in with him. If he pulled you over for speeding, he probably made you laugh. If you were under his command as a soldier, he probably made you smile. And if you were related to him, God, do I know he made us smile. While being my dad's only son, I understood at about 12 years old that growing up with him was going to be challenging. Because of the path my dad was on in the military, as well as being a police officer, I knew he was going to challenge me. As time went on, my dad started climbing the ranks in the military and the police department. With each year that passed was another year of leadership, wisdom, respect, and friendship that was poured into me. Several years ago, I had the honor to pin my dad as lieutenant colonel. This was also around the same time I joined the Army as well. It was so hard to not go around telling everyone that my dad was Colonel Brown. Eventually, I found out it didn't really matter anymore because everyone started finding out. I guess when you tell one person about it, it starts spreading like crazy. I always tried keeping it a secret from those around me because I always thought my NCOs would expect more out of me. I guess it's not a secret anymore, so if any of my NCOs are out there listening, please ignore this. But Dad, I want you to know how proud I have been to be your son. Through all of our hardships, gaming nights, football nights, nights at the bar, Christmas, birthdays, Father's Days, your love in my heart will forever be everlasting. I have thought about you every second of every day and will continue to do so until I meet you one day in heaven. Thank you for your sacrifices, your smile, your feats of strength, your leadership, and for being my favorite man in the world. And Mom, thank you for marrying Dad and bringing my sisters and I into this world. You are the absolute love of our lives and the kindle in this family. I know you see so much of Dad in me, and I promise to grow up and fill that void for you. And one day when I have kids of my own, I promise that the love that comes from my heart is going to be just like his. On November 17th, our God in heaven embraced his arms around my dad. On November 17th,
The world lost a commander, a brother in blue, a soldier, a papa, a husband, and a dad. As a soldier under your own command, I tell you, until Valhalla. But as your only son, I tell you, I love you so much, Dad. I will always be your little man Brown, your mini-me, your Ev, your son. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey. I am Matt's oldest daughter. I'm a little dehydrated these days, so getting through this might be a little bit difficult, so please bear with me. I'm going to begin by reading a letter that my little sister wrote to my dad. Dear Daddy, I remember as a kid, I used to keep myself up at night scared something would happen to you while in the Army or police force. Now I would have never guessed, at 18 years old, I'd actually have to face those fears of mine. These past few days have given me so much to reminisce about you. Realizing that you should be considered a celebrity because of all the people that knew and loved you. I am so grateful to have been your daughter. For all those daddy-daughter dances we experienced as a kid, where I smothered my face in chocolate from the chocolate fountain, to sitting at the kitchen counter, talking about politics and anything controversial with you for hours on end. You truly were the perfect father. You put your family before anything. You made each person feel like they were the only person in the room. You lit up a whole room with your insanely white, bright smile. As hard as this has been for me, I know that in my heart you are made whole and new in heaven, that you are no longer suffering or hurting, and that you are in the place you've always wanted to be. This brings me a great deal of comfort because I always wanted the best for you, because you deserved it more than anyone. I want you to know that I promise I'll be okay. Evan will walk me down the aisle someday at my wedding. I'll forever be Mom's roommate, and I'll go to Japan for the both of us. And I also promise to take good care of your car and black out all the chrome that you hated on it. I wish I could go on one more vacation with you, and as much as you hated it, I wish we could all say, he's in Matt Brown mode. I wish I could hug you one more time and squeeze you extra hard, because those always made my day. I wish I could see you dress up for the Renaissance Festival one more time as you search for the mead in your clanky armor suit. I wish for so many things I could do with you one last time, but I love that our last memories with you were always good memories. I've never been more proud to call someone my dad. Anyone that met you instantly felt connected to you in some shape or form. Whether it was feeling like a dad to them, a gamer buddy, a fellow nerd, or just a friendly smile to them, you always left an imprint on everyone you met. Even my friends that hardly knew you wished that you were their dad or wanted to go out on bro dates with you. Even my best friend Brooke felt like she had become part of our family, and you took her in as another daughter and always greeted her with the biggest smile, and you were so goofy with her. I wish more people would have met you, but I am so grateful for all those who did, even if it was for 5 minutes on the side of the road. You will always and forever be my hero, Daddy. I mean that with my whole heart and being. You showed us how strong you were. You fought for this country and protected the streets. You took great care of your family, and nothing ever went unnoticed. You were many people's heroes, but I promise I was your #1 fan. I loved how much of a words person you were. Looking back on all of our texts and emails and voicemails, I realized how much you loved to just give words to me. Words were your biggest love tank filler. Even just a little good morning text meant the world to you. You were always so grateful for the words our family provided, and you definitely reciprocated 3 times the amount of words of affirmations back to us. A lot of dads may not show this side of them, but you were proud of this side of you. You showed us each and every day what a daughter and a family deserves. You always told us how much we meant to you, even if you were in the middle of a store and saw something that reminded you of us. I will forever be grateful for a daddy who didn't care to be feminine with me. You always loved to dye my hair any chance I needed it dyed, and you would use your best girly voice while styling my hair, and I always loved that. You always wanted to paint my nails for me or put makeup on me. You taught yourself how to braid just to do my hair for me. Even if it wasn't the best braid, it still meant a lot to me. You showed me exactly what a dad should look like. The person I choose to marry will be like you, because I want nothing more than to be treated how you treated us. I want to thank you all for coming today to honor my dad. I know some of you have traveled a very long distance to pay your respects, and I know my dad would have loved to see you all together. I know my dad would have eaten all of this up to see he's getting the motorcycles and the 21-gun salute for him and more. All he needs now is a few knights in armor on horses and men in kilts playing the flute. Daddy, I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. I cannot begin to fathom the amount of love you had for me, and I hope you know that I have the same for you. I will carry you in my heart everywhere I go and never stop thinking about you and your sweet smile. Your laugh and voice fills my head, and I swear sometimes I even hear you calling my name from upstairs while you stomp around. Your scent still lingers around the house, and as silly as it sounds, I wear your hoodies and sit in your car with the floorboard lights on that you installed because it's the closest thing to you giving me a hug. I miss the sound of your boots on the floor as the garage door closed. It let me know you were finally home from work. If I could, I'd wish back all of the things that annoyed me. I wouldn't mind hearing you blast the TV upstairs when watching a movie if it meant I got to see you one last time. Someday I will go and I will tell you, going to Japan was a dream of ours that we've had since I can remember. Someday I will go and I will tell you about it, Daddy. Something me and my dad used to say to each other was, I love you, in Japanese. So it only feels right to end this letter off with that. I love you always, Dad. Aishiteru. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Bailey. I'm Matt's firstborn. I'm married to Brandon, his son-in-law, and I'm mother to his 2 grandsons, Lauren and Dimitri, who he called Ren and Michi. I want to thank every single person who is here today. I know every person here today came because they wanted to, because my dad meant something to you or left an impression on you. You have no idea what a comfort it is to look out on this room full of people and know that he is grieved by more people than just us. This room is a representation of the love for him, and I know that this is still just a fraction of the people that he touched. I can't even begin to wrap my head around the number of people in our community and beyond who shared a happy memory, friendship, or pleasant interaction with him. There is so much comfort in the thought of that. I've always known that if and when my parents passed one day, I would speak at their funeral. When this happened, the thought of standing up here and doing this for Dad was a no-brainer. Not only could I imagine not sharing who he was with the world, but I'm also here because this is what my dad would do for anyone else. He was the guy you went to for these types of things because you knew how much love, time, and effort he would put into a difficult task. And he would do it because he wanted to. He had a gift for speaking, and I remember when I was in the 5th grade running for student council, he helped me write my speech. I thought his advice was really good until I didn't win. But man, I wish he could be here to help me write this now. I'm not even really sure where to begin. How do I do enough justice to the nearly 25 years I had with him? There are thousands of memories, personality traits, and mannerisms that I could pick from. I could stand here all day talking to you about him and still have more to tell you. But I think I will start with my favorite, and that was his role as a daddy. He was the most incredible daddy. I know because he's never stopped telling me that he has loved me since before I was born. Our bond was instantaneous and strong. His ability to love me came so naturally to him, and there was never a question that I would be a daddy's girl. He was there for everything. Every milestone, from taking my first steps and losing my first tooth, to walking me down the aisle and holding my hand while I labored my first child. He taught me how to swim, ride a bike, read my Bible, how to drive, pump gas, and schedule for college courses. He taught me how to speak to adults, give a firm handshake, and to treat others with kindness and respect. He read me books, watched a million movies with me. We played countless hours of World of Warcraft together. He helped me catch bugs and sneak pet snakes into the house, and I'm pretty sure Mom is still forgiving him for that one. My dad never missed a chance to make me feel special. He was constantly writing me random cards, letters, and notes, often accompanied by flowers. He would send random texts and calls for no reason other than to tell me how beautiful and loved I was. He would pull me out of school and take me on daddy-daughter dates to all my favorite places. He was there for every new hobby and sport I tried, and always made me feel like I could make it to the Olympics, even though I barely made it to the junior varsity team for track. He was one of the most affectionate people I've ever known. He never missed the chance to kiss my cheek, tuck my hair behind my ear, give me one of his famous bear hugs, or just rest a hand on my arm. It was so obvious to everyone who saw him with us that he loved us so much. I always knew we had a special bond, but it never dawned on me just how rare it was until I had friends at school tell me that they were jealous of my relationship with my dad. And just as much as he loved me, I loved him back. I was always looking out for him and his feelings. We would listen to songs like Butterfly Kisses and cry about me growing up. He always told me about how I had to stay his little girl forever and never get married. When I was 13, I got my first boyfriend, and when I told him about it, I cried because I didn't want to break his heart. I even emailed him one time after going to the doctor and told him that my doctor said I was starting puberty and I thought he deserved the heads up. Thankfully, though, growing up proved to be more beautiful than it was sad. Our relationship grew in new ways as he helped me move into my college dorm and listened to me talk about a sweet guy I met who I kind of wanted to marry. We listened to more rock music and attended more concerts than we had ever together. He brought me coffee and helped me plan my wedding. Somehow, on my wedding day, he managed to hold it together, despite always joking that he would need to be drugged in order to make it through the day in one piece. We shared a first look, a walk down the aisle, a dance, and a speech from him that I will forever hold dear. He and my husband had a bond that I didn't know was possible for a father and son-in-law to have. He truly loved Brandon like his own and stepped up for him in ways that Brandon never had from a father-son relationship. When I finally had babies of my own, my daddy became a papa, and I got to see all of the love I received growing up reflected back onto my own children. Their papa loved them so much. He was constantly stealing Ren away for pool dates and bringing them gifts. He showered my boys in kisses, hugs, snuggles, and tickles. He actually got both of my kids to smile and laugh as babies before Brandon or I were ever able to. When I bring Ren to my parents' house, he runs straight to my dad's office because he knows Papa is usually there waiting to scoop him up. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do when Ren asks for his Papa now. But I'm so glad that I knew to give him the middle name Matthew. My dad was an amazing father, papa, and loving husband, but he was also an amazing friend. He was a yes man. Any and every request was always an enthusiastic, happy to do it yes. Several years ago, my dad's friend, Steve Bamer, asked him to officiate his wedding. So what did my dad do? He hopped on the computer, got himself certified as a minister, and officiated his wedding. I didn't even know that that was a thing. He actually went on to do 2 more weddings after that, too. It didn't matter how much Dad had on his plate, he was always sacrificing time for himself and hours of sleep to make sure everyone else in his life was taken care of. He never failed to make you feel like you mattered. If he was in conversation with you, you had his full attention, and he genuinely wanted to know how you were and what made you unique. He was especially good at this in his line of work. I know that if Matt Brown happened to be the cop that pulled you over, all you'd have to do was cry, and he'd probably let you off the hook. And speaking of getting pulled over, Dad always told me that if I ever got pulled over to slip in who he was for a get-out-of-jail-free pass. I'm not a good driver, and I know for a fact someone in this room will be pulling me over, so I'm gonna need that to still be true. Seriously, spread the word. There were so many wonderful things about Dad that I just don't have time to mention here, but if there's one thing I loved, it was what a nerd he was. This was a side that many of him weren't as aware of, although most of you probably are now today. But he was so obsessed with all things Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, video game, anime, and Japanese related. You may have noticed earlier that a lot of the music playing today was from different movies, specifically from Studio Ghibli films. Those movies are known for their beautiful landscapes and imagery. Dad always said that he wanted to live in one of those, and I know God created a heaven for him that looks like all his favorite movies. Having to think about my daddy being in heaven is not what I pictured my life looking like right now. He had so much life left to experience. He was supposed to be my boy's best friend forever. He had his kids' weddings to attend, more grandbabies to love, and probably even great-grandbabies. He was supposed to take me on a walk this past week to see the fall leaves, and I will never get that walk. I'll never see his name pop up on my phone screen again, hear him call me babying, or watch my son run into his arms. I will spend the rest of my life looking for him. The only way I know how to carry out his legacy is to love my children like he loved us and to continually advocate for mental health. My dad was burdened with demons from a traumatic past. His mental health and his self-worth were rock bottom. It is hard to understand how someone who loves you so much could leave you, but my dad was very sick. When he felt that he had hurt us beyond repair, he dissociated and convinced himself that his death would hurt us less than any hurt he would cause us while being alive. But that could not be further from the truth. We are utterly heartbroken. I would take him at his worst any day before I would want him dead. For many years, our family has struggled and wrestled with pain. We tried so hard to help him while also trying to heal ourselves. Very few people would have known by looking at him or his family, and it is true that you really do not know who among you is really suffering. By that measure, there are people listening to me right now who may be thinking about suicide. If there is anything that you take from all of this today, let it be this. Don't. Don't do it. This pain is indescribable. Believe me when I say my dad's mistakes have hurt me deeper than anyone else has ever hurt me, but even in that hurt, I would never choose this. This hurts so much worse. My daddy deserved life. He deserved reconciliation and a life where we figured it out, and we would have figured it out. You deserve life, and you deserve to be well. You are loved even when you think you aren't. When my dad decided to end his life, he thought he was thinking clearly. He genuinely thought that it made sense. If you ever find yourself in that position, I promise you, you are not thinking clearly. Please just call someone, let them speak truth to you. If my dad could sit here and see what he had done, he would ask himself what the hell he was thinking. This is the last thing we would have wanted for us. You have options, you have resources. There are people in your life and professionally who want to help you. There is no shame in sharing about your mental health. Please tell someone when you are struggling. In my dad's line of work especially, you are trained to be self-sacrificing in order to do hard things. Trauma has a way of messing with you, when you think you're tough enough to handle it alone, but you don't have to. There is a much larger conversation to be had about these things, but if anything about my dad's life and death has made an impact on you, please consider that you may be being drawn into a greater purpose. We have to destigmatize mental illness for everyone, and especially for service members. And if you find yourself in a position of leadership of any kind, I encourage you to think about how you can carry on this conversation and provide the support that others so desperately and often silently need. Finally, I want to make this clear to anyone here who loved my dad and has regret in their heart, because I too struggle with regret. I wish I would have told him more of the things he loved to hear, and I've wondered if I had done more or less of certain things if we would be here today. Please know that nothing you did pushed my dad to this point. No one is perfect, and no friendship is perfect, but please take it from someone who knew him. The kindness that I know each of you showed him is all that he needed. He has been made whole. God has given him the wisdom and understanding that surpasses this world. I know it is easier said than done, but there's no reason to worry about something left unsaid. I find comfort in knowing that he knows now. He truly knows how much love we had for him, and he gets to spend eternity in that love. I wanted to finish by reading a poem that my daddy wrote for me when I was a kid. It is a perfect representation of his love for me. And God breathed the breath of life to which he gave my little girl. From the day she was born, brown hair and curl. Her perfect blue eyes fixed upon mine, I held her close to now wrestle with time. And God breathed the winds of change from day to day, where as a child she will no longer play. I look back to remember by and by, holding her close to no longer cry. And God breathed the flow of time to where my little girl held fast, leaving behind the childhood things of the past. To grow as a seed from the stem to the rose, in all of creation she did God's perfection show. And God breathed to calm the storm as I struggle through the years, to hold fast to this child as the inevitable nears, where one day my little girl takes flight, her daddy not letting go, holding on tight. And God breathed a breath of joy and looking at perfection, this girl, nothing so beautiful nor diamond nor pearl, her radiance upon this earth forever to cast, and her daddy's love forever to last.
Well written and well spoken. I think since we are in a church, we should receive an offering now for Evan's Jaguar. Is that a good idea? Not yet? Okay. I do have a letter that Kelly has asked me to read that she has written to Matt. I'm sorry I cannot be the one to stand in front of all these people who love you and read this. You were always the strong one who could shoulder those difficult situations, not me. 29 years of loving you and 27 of them married was simply just not enough. I wanted more, but I am also eternally grateful for the years we had. I don't know how to bring justice to almost 3 decades through one short letter, but then again, if anyone knew us, they were aware of our unique draw to each other. We fell in love hard and fast way back in our auto magic days. I know some people or some couples do that, and then things fade over the years, but that never happened to you and I. I know this because we talked about it often. Somehow our souls just blended, and we both wholly reciprocated that love. I couldn't tell you where you stopped and I started. We absolutely had challenges over the years, and we both made mistakes, but ultimately we always chose each other. And I think our love was fairly obvious to anyone we were around. You sent me a long letter before you died. Unfortunately, you were already gone by the time I read it. I will always keep that between you and I, but I will share one thing you told me. You said, please choose to think of me, of the good in me. Matt, you were good. We are all broken and flawed, but the real you was so good. So to honor you, I will keep that as the theme of this letter to you, to remember the things I loved and will miss. I will miss giving you nightly back scratches. I know I always acted annoyed when you grabbed your pillow and made your way to my side of the bed, but secretly I loved it. I will miss those famous Matt Brown hugs. That is what I started calling them long ago because I have never met a better hugger. You committed to them 100% with everyone. I loved watching your natural-born leadership. People would follow you anywhere. I will miss watching you take our girls on daddy-daughter dates. Those never stopped, even as they got older. I will miss watching you nerd out with Evan and speak WoW, we'll call it, because we all know what that is now, but it's World of Warcraft language that I couldn't begin to understand. I miss our yearly trips to Stone Chapel on our anniversary, where we got married. We were such saps, just wandering around the grounds trying to relive May 28th, 1994. I will miss how you loved to surprise me, even though I hated surprises. And you always went so overboard, like surprise trips to Greece or buying me a new SUV with a big red bow on top. I was spoiled by your love. I loved how you never complained about workloads. The PD and Army combined put a huge drain on you, but it never showed. Your work ethic could not be matched. I will miss watching you chase Ren through the house with him screeching in delight. He adored you, and you guys were definitely on track to become best friends. I will miss you being the designated pancake maker on Christmas morning. I loved watching you and the kids live out your Renaissance Festival dreams every October. I was happy to step back and let you be or do your thing with the kids. I mean, what dad wears a full set of armor for 2 days straight? I loved your tender heart for older people, animals, and children. Such a kind and gentle spirit you had for them. And you passed that trait on to Evan. I loved how you ate anything I put in front of you. I was a decent cook, but sometimes messed things up, but you never let me know that and licked your plate clean. I will miss performing all my silly dances for you. You tried not to laugh too hard, but we both know how ridiculous I looked. I miss making dinner with you in the kitchen while listening to Journey stream. I knew you preferred metal, but with me, you were more happy to tone it down. I loved how you somehow made better ponytails and pigtails for the girls when they were little. Even as they got older, you served as Mallory's hairdresser. In fact, you just colored her hair last week. I'll miss what a phenomenal listener you were. So many pep talks you gave me over the years, and you always believed I could do anything. You were always so proud of me and told me so. I loved how you called me Kelbell. Every single card was signed this way. You spoke it to me, and it was your term of endearment for me. And you were the only one allowed to call me this. I will miss how you gladly complied with my impulsive request. You know, if I got in my head that a picture needed to be hung at 10 p.m., it was best just to let me have my way. I love how chivalrous you were. Honor and courtesy were just ingrained in you. Anytime we took a walk, you insisted on walking on the inside in case a passing car got too close. I will miss how I fit perfectly into the crook of your neck when we hugged. Our height difference was just perfect enough to allow for me to just nestle right in and stay there a while. I will miss our annual trip to Roundtree neighborhood in the fall. We waited until the trees peaked, grabbed our coffee, and drove around for hours, dreaming of which one we could afford in a few years. You wanted that so bad, to have our little cottage on the tree-lined streets. I'll miss all your silly quirks. I know I acted annoyed, but I love them. Whether it was wanting your laundry folded a certain way or your portable heater being left on even when the AC was blasting. You just had a certain way you needed things to be. I miss fulfilling your love language, words of affirmation. I know how vital that was to your love tank, and I wish I would have done better. I will miss our coffee dates and first watch breakfast dates. I sorely miss summertime pool lounging and sitting on the deck in the rocking chairs you bought me. I will miss watching NFL with you. We actually didn't have many common hobbies, so when I became a football fan or a football obsessed a few years ago, you ate up getting to experience that alongside with me. I understand the game well because you patiently answered my 10,000 questions I had. I love how you never allowed me to erase Mallory's sweet message she wrote on your bathroom mirror with a marker. It's 6 years old, covered in toothpaste, splatter, and hairspray, but you panicked if I ever even mentioned bringing out the Windex. I will sorely miss eating cereal in bed with you while watching Dateline. You were always such a good sport about my Captain Crunch and murder mystery obsession. I will miss needing you. Even though I'm a pretty independent girl, there was so much that stressed me out that you made things look easy. You even filled my car with gas a lot because you knew how much I hated doing that. I will miss hearing the garage door go up and getting excited that you were home. I can still hear how your footsteps fell as you came in and how your keys sounded hitting the counter. I will miss how you taught me to communicate so openly. We tease you about all of the family meetings, but you taught us a healthy way to resolve conflict, and you taught our kids a valuable tool. I will miss your never-ending kindness, playful teasing, and fierce protection. I felt so safe with you. I loved how you asked me not to buy you junk food and then pretended to be mad when I came home from Walmart with ice cream, Oreos, and Chips Ahoy, all the while knowing you'd be pigging out later. I will miss driving by our first house in Springfield together. It was tiny and basic, but it represented the start to our family. Life was so sweet and simple back then. I will miss you sending me pics every time you went through a car wash. We met at a car wash, so every time you headed through the soapy tunnel, you thought of me and text a pic. I have dozens of those on my phone. You would just send the pic, no caption needed. I'll miss seeing the camaraderie of you and your fellow police officers and soldiers. It's a unique bond, and I ate up getting to be the wife of both and seeing those relationships. There's a palpable difference about a relationship that you would lay your life down for. I will miss our devotions and talks about God. You had such wisdom, and I was blown away at how I could read Scripture 100 times and not understand, yet you could spout off explanations and go straight to cross-referencing and recite verses from memory. I will miss talking about our future. We had so much planned, so much left to do. We were getting so close to life slowing down a bit. Matt, there are not enough minutes here for me to keep going because I could go on for days, but I want to thank you for a gift you gave me, the only thing that has brought me much peace these last few days, and that is the 100% assurance of your salvation. That was one of the number one things that drew me to you when we first met. I know your heart. We talked openly about it, and there was no doubt that you understood the gift of eternal life and a relationship with Christ. You openly shared your faith and lived out your life verse. The way your life ended was not God's plan, and Satan went after the core of our family. I won't say he won because I won't give him that satisfaction. My promise to my family and God is that I will not permit him to tear us further apart in any way. We will stick together and honor you, Matt. Just 4 weeks ago, you and I shared the best day. It was a 90-degree day in October, and I looked at you and said, let's pretend like it's summer and go to the lake. We got our suits on, packed some drinks in a cooler, and picked up roast beef subs. We had some struggles at the time, but there seemed to be an unspoken understanding that we both gave ourselves permission to be off the hook for the day from heavy conversations and just enjoy each other. It was literally the best day. We sat for hours on the dock soaking up the sun. We even downloaded a conversation starter app for couples and took turns asking each other questions. It spawned some deep and meaningful dialogue and laughter. At the end of the day, you couldn't help yourself and playfully shoved me into the water. Your childlike grin and laughter from that are etched in my brain forever. Sadly, that was the very dock, the place where you chose to take your life. Matt, if this could happen to you, a man who appeared so outwardly pulled together, high-achieving, functional, and seemingly happy, then we all know someone in our lives that is at risk for this. Just a few months ago, you spent an hour on the phone with one of my good friends who was dealing with a suicidal loved one. You gave her wisdom and compassion. Just last week at work, you were the first on scene to an attempted suicide. She was near death, and you helped save her. I have to believe that by the time you made your decision, you were not capable of any reason or logic. The Matt we all know and love would never rationally decide he was causing us less pain in death than in life. Matt, I will not let your death be in vain. My hurt is still too fresh to know what that looks like, but my promise to you is this. I will allow God to use me however he sees fit to keep this from happening to anyone else I know. I am aware I have a platform, and I will honor you by not wasting that opportunity. Matt, I was always so proud to be your wife. You were chosen by God to be my husband, and I regret nothing. I read an anniversary card you gave me years ago, and you wrote, "You are my perfect beginning and eternal ending. The ending isn't what I wanted, but eternal nonetheless, because I'll never stop loving you. Love, your Kelbell." Hearing these stories, and as we once again look around the room, there's many ways and many things we're going to remember about Matt. To the remaining friends and family, it is said that death may end our lives, but could never end our relationships. So let his memory serve as a testimony in your life. When these thoughts of the quirky little things that he did come into your mind, think of Matt and think of good thoughts. Those memories will come flooding back in. Cherish those times. Share those times with each other. And that will be the legacy that is left for Matt Brown. We'll have good days and we'll have days that are difficult. But when the times are at their toughest, I invite you to turn to Jesus, who's the comforter, and know that he understands what you're feeling in times. Would you pray with me? God, we have been made aware of the shortness and uncertainty of human lives. Father, let your Spirit lead us in the right ways of living, so we may gather with those who have gone on before us, confident in our faith and comforted by your hope. Father, we come to you with hurting hearts today. God, thank you for meeting us at a place of peace today. We thank you for Matt. We thank you for his friends and his family represented here. May your presence bring a sense of hope, a sense of healing, and a sense of comfort. We pray this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I do want to thank Pastor Wayne and his team for hosting us today. And at this time, I'd like to invite Winford Laster up. He's going to give us some instructions as far as the procession will go from this point. Thank you once again for being here on behalf of the family. From the bottom of their hearts, we're grateful for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the family, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. Due to our time that we need to be at the cemetery, we will not be able to do a pass-by by the casket, but I would like to thank you all for coming. If any of you that have already would like to go in procession, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, if you want to meet out at the cemetery, you can't get into the cemetery till about 1:15. But if you want to go in procession, we're going to do so. Be sure to turn on your headlights and your flashers so everyone will know you're in procession. Otherwise, you can just meet us at the cemetery if you'd like to go out there. So once again, thank you all for coming. The funeral home directors will come forward, and they'll usher you straight out the back if you want to go to your cars, and either meet us out there or get ready to line up for a procession. So thank you so much.